I stared at the yellowed paper in my hands, my world crumbling around me. The attic suddenly felt too small, too stuffy. I couldn't breathe. Ethan, Ava is perfect for you. Jessica has held you back long enough. Love, Mom. My mother-in-law's words burned into my brain. Maddie had never liked me, but this was a whole new level of betrayal. And Ethan, my Ethan. How could he? I stumbled down the attic stairs, letter clutched in my fist. Ethan was in the kitchen, humming as he made coffee. The sight of him, so normal, so oblivious, made my blood boil. Ethan, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned, smile fading as he saw my face. Jess? What's wrong? I held up the letter. Care to explain this? His face drained of color. He reached for the paper, but I snatched it away. Jessica, I can explain dash. Explain what? I spat. That you're having an affair with Ava? That your mother is encouraging you to leave me? Ethan's shoulders sagged. It's not, it's complicated. Uncomplicate it for me, I demanded. He ran a hand through his hair, looking everywhere but at me. Ava and I, it just happened. I never meant dash. Never meant for me to find out? I finished for him. The silence stretched between us, 25 years of marriage suddenly feeling like a lie. How long? I asked. Ethan's voice was barely audible. 6 months. The truth hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal. Get out, I said, surprised by the calmness in my voice. Jess, please dash. I said, get out. I screamed, hurling the letter at him. As Ethan scrambled to gather his keys and wallet, I sank to the kitchen floor, my mind reeling. How had I not seen this coming? What would I tell Lucas? The front door slammed, and I was alone. Alone with the shattered pieces of my life and a burning desire for revenge against the woman who had orchestrated it all, Maddie Harper. The sound of Lucas's key in the front door made me jump. I quickly wiped my eyes and plastered on a smile. My son didn't need to know about his father's betrayal. Not yet. Mom? Dad? Lucas called out, dropping his backpack by the stairs. In the kitchen, sweetie, I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. Lucas appeared in the doorway, his face lighting up at the sight of me. But his smile faded as he glanced around the room. Where's Dad? I swallowed hard. He had to go out for a bit. Work emergency. Lucas's brow furrowed. On a Sunday? You know how it is with the store, I said, forcing a laugh. Always something. He nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. My smart, perceptive boy. He'd always been able to read me like a book. Mom, is everything okay? You and Dad seem tense. I felt my carefully constructed facade crumbling. We're just dealing with some grown-up problems, sweetie. Don't worry. Lucas crossed the room and wrapped me in a hug. I clung to him, fighting back tears. Whatever it is, you can tell me, he murmured. I'm not a kid anymore. I pulled back, cupping his face in my hands. I know, baby. But this is something your father and I need to work out ourselves. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced normalcy. I cooked dinner, we watched a movie, and all the while, my phone remained silent. No call, no text from Ethan. It wasn't until Lucas had gone to bed that I allowed myself to break down. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my wedding ring when my phone finally buzzed. A text from Ethan, I need some time to think. I'm staying at a hotel for a few days. The words hit me like a physical blow. He was choosing her. Choosing Ava over his family. With shaking hands, I typed back. What about Lucas? What do I tell him? The response came quickly. Tell him I had to go out of town for work. I'll explain everything when I get back. More lies. More deception. I threw the phone across the room, listening with satisfaction as it clattered against the wall. As I sat there in the dark kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of the life we'd built together, a cold determination settled over me. Ethan might have betrayed me, but I'd be damned if I let Maddie and her schemes destroy my family. I retrieved my phone, ignoring the cracked screen, and dialed a familiar number. Samantha? It's me. I need your help. The bell above the hardware store's door chimed, and I looked up to see Maddie sauntering in like she owned the place. In her mind, she probably did. Jessica, dear, she cooed, her smile as fake as her bleached hair. How are you managing? I gritted my teeth. Just fine, Maddie. Can I help you with something? She waved a manicured hand. Oh, I'm just checking in. Making sure everything's running smoothly with Ethan away. The pause before away was deliberate, loaded with insinuation. I refused to take the bait. The store's doing great, I said, forcing a smile. In fact, we're up 15% from last quarter. Maddie's eyes narrowed. Is that so? Well, maybe you should step aside, Jessica. This store has been in our family for generations. We wouldn't want any mistakes. My hands clenched into fists beneath the counter. I'm not going anywhere, Maddie. I'm holding this family together. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Family? Oh, honey, you were never really part of this family. Before I could respond, Rebecca burst through the door, her face flushed. Mom, we need to go. Now. Maddie turned, frowning. What's wrong? Rebecca's eyes darted to me, then back to her mother. It's about the thing. With Ava. My heart stopped. Ava. The other woman. Ethan's. Maddie paled, grabbing Rebecca's arm. We'll discuss this at home, she hissed, steering her daughter towards the exit. As they left, I sagged against the counter, my mind reeling. What were they hiding about Ava? And why did they look so panicked? I needed answers. Opening the store's financial records on the computer, I began digging. Hours passed as I combed through transactions, looking for anything unusual. And then I saw it. A series of large withdrawals, all made by Ethan, all around the same time each month. The most recent one was just last week. My hands shook as I added up the total. Over $50,000 in the past 6 months. All funneled to an account I didn't recognize. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Ethan wasn't just having an affair. He was supporting Ava financially. With money from our family business. Tears blurred my vision as I stared at the screen. How could he do this? How could he betray not just me, but everything we'd built together? The store phone rang, startling me. I answered automatically, my voice hollow. Harper's Hardware. Jess. It was Ethan. I need to talk to you. It's important. I clutched the phone, anger and hurt warring inside me. Oh, now you want to talk? After stealing from our business to fund your affair? Silence on the other end. Then, how did you dash? Save it, I snapped. I know everything, Ethan. And believe me, this conversation is long overdue. I paced the living room, my mind racing. Ethan was on his way over, and I still hadn't decided how to confront him about the money. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Ethan stood on the porch, looking haggard. Jess, I dash. Save it, I snapped, stepping aside to let him in. You've got a lot of explaining to do. We sat across from each other, the coffee table between us like a battle line. Ethan's eyes were red-rimmed, his shoulders slumped. I'm so sorry, Jess. I never meant for any of this to happen. I laughed bitterly. Which part? The affair or stealing from our business? He flinched. I know I've messed up. But there's something you need to know. It's about Ava. My stomach clenched. What about her? Ethan took a deep breath. She's pregnant.
The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the armchair, feeling like I might be sick. Pregnant? I whispered. He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. That's why I've been taking money from the store. For doctor's appointments, prenatal care. How could you, Ethan? I choked out. This changes everything. I didn't mean for this to happen, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Jess. Rage boiled up inside me. Sorry? You destroy our marriage, our family, our business, and all you can say is sorry. Ethan reached for my hand, but I jerked away. Please, Jess. I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I want to make things right. I stood up, needing to put distance between us. Make things right? How exactly do you plan to do that? Are you leaving Ava? Abandoning your child? He looked stricken. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. Well, figure it out fast. I spat. Because I'm done waiting for you to make up your mind. As Ethan opened his mouth to respond, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. About Ethan and the baby. Ava. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. This was it. The moment that would determine everything. I looked up at Ethan, my decision made. I'm meeting Ava, I said, grabbing my keys. And when I get back, you'd better be ready to tell me the whole truth. No more lies, no more excuses. As I walked out the door, leaving Ethan stammering behind me, I felt a strange mix of fear and determination. Whatever Ava had to say, whatever came next, I was done being a victim. It was time to take control of my life, my family, and my future. I stormed into the hardware store, my eyes scanning the aisles until I spotted her. Ava, the woman who had torn my life apart. She was restocking shelves, her slightly rounded belly visible beneath her uniform shirt. My stomach churned at the sight. Ava. I called out, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. She turned, her eyes widening as she saw me. Jessica, I dash. Save it, I snapped, closing the distance between us. You wanted to talk? Let's talk. Ava glanced nervously at the other employees who were pretending not to watch us. Maybe we should go somewhere more private? Why? I asked, my voice rising. Afraid everyone will find out what you've done? How you've destroyed my family. Her face flushed. It's not like that. Ethan and I dash. Ethan and you what? I interrupted. You think you can just walk into my life and take everything I've built? Ava's eyes flashed with defiance. Ethan loves me, Jessica. You need to accept that. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, gripping a nearby shelf for support. Mrs. Harper? It was Tom, one of our longtime employees. Is everything okay? I forced a smile. Everything's fine, Tom. Just a little disagreement. Ava seized the opportunity to pull me into the back office, away from prying eyes and ears. Look, she said, her voice low and urgent. I know you're hurt and angry, but there's something you need to know. I crossed my arms, waiting. Maddie and Rebecca. They've been pushing this from the beginning. They convinced Ethan that you were holding him back, that I could give him the family they always wanted. My mind reeled. What are you talking about? Ava sighed. They've been manipulating both of us, Jessica. Maddie's been telling Ethan for years that you're not good enough for him, that you're the reason they don't have more grandchildren. The pieces started falling into place. The snide comments, the constant criticism, the way Maddie and Rebecca always seemed to be whispering behind my back. Why are you telling me this? I asked, suspicion creeping into my voice. Ava placed a hand on her belly. Because I'm starting to realize what kind of family I'm getting involved with. And I'm not sure it's what I want for my child. I stared at her, torn between anger and a strange sense of kinship. We were both pawns in Maddie and Rebecca's game. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Afa met my gate. Help. I want out, but I'm afraid of what they'll do. And I think Ethan needs you more than he realizes. As I stood there, processing everything, I knew I had a choice to make. I could walk away, let Ethan and his family deal with the mess they'd created. Or I could fight, not just for my marriage, but for the truth. Taking a deep breath, I made my decision. Tell me everything, I said. From the beginning. I paced my living room, my mind racing with everything Ava had told me. Samantha sat on the couch, watching me with concern. Jess, you need to slow down. This is a lot to process. I shook my head. I can't slow down. Not now. I need to expose what Maddie and Rebecca have been doing. Samantha leaned forward. And how exactly do you plan to do that? I stopped pacing, a plan forming in my mind. The store's finances. I've been managing them for years. If there's any evidence of their manipulation, it'll be there. You need to hit them where it hurts, Jess, Samantha said. Show them you're not to be messed with. I nodded, determination coursing through me. I'll make sure they regret ever crossing me. For the next few hours, I pored over financial records, bank statements, and transaction logs. As the pieces started falling into place, my blood ran cold. "Oh my God," I whispered. Samantha looked up from her laptop. "What is it?" "They've been embezzling money from the store for years. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, funneled into offshore accounts." "Are you sure?" I nodded, my hands shaking as I showed her the evidence. "And that's not all. They've been using the store to launder money for some local criminals. If this gets out, it could destroy everything." Just then my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "We need to talk. Now." I looked at Samantha, fear and determination warring inside me. This is it. I have to confront them. She grabbed my arm. "Jess, be careful. These people are dangerous." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I know, but I can't let them win. Not after everything they've done." As I drove to the store, my mind raced with possibilities. How would Ethan react? Would Maddie and Rebecca try to deny everything? And what about Ava and the baby? I pulled into the parking lot, surprised to see Maddie's car there too. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the store, the bell chiming ominously. Ethan, Maddie, and Rebecca were huddled near the counter, their faces grim. They looked up as I approached, and I saw a flicker of fear in Maddie's eyes. "Jessica," Ethan said, his voice strained, "we need to talk about the future of this store." I met his gaze, my voice steady. "Yes, we do. But first, let's talk about the past. About the money laundering, the embezzlement, and the manipulation." The color drained from their faces. Maddie stepped forward, her eyes flashing. "You don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out a USB drive, holding it up. "Oh, but I do. And I have proof of everything." "So, who wants to start explaining?" The tension in the room was palpable. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, trying to find a way out. But I knew I had them cornered. This was it, the moment of truth. And I was ready for whatever came next. The silence in the store was deafening. I stood my ground, USB drive clutched in my hand like a weapon, as Ethan, Maddie, and Rebecca stared at me in shock. Maddie was the first to recover. "You're bluffing," she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "You have nothing." I connected the drive to the store's computer, pulling up the damning financial records. "This is what your mother and sister have been doing behind your back, Ethan," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "It's time you see the truth." Ethan's face paled as he scanned the documents. "I can't believe this," he whispered. "Mom, Rebecca, how could you?" Rebecca burst into tears. "We had no choice. The store was failing, and we needed the money to keep it afloat. By laundering money for criminals?" I spat. "By stealing from your own son?" Maddie stepped forward, her face a mask of fury. "Everything we did was for this family, for the legacy your father left behind. You wouldn't understand, Jessica. You've never truly been one of us." I felt a surge of anger. "No, Maddie. What you did was for yourselves. You manipulated Ethan, pushed him into an affair, all to maintain your control over him and this store." Ethan's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" I took a deep breath. "Ava told me everything. How they convinced you I was holding you back. How they orchestrated your relationship with her." The color drained from Ethan's face. He turned to his mother and sister, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is this true?" The guilty looks on their faces said it all. "I've been such a fool," Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. I placed a hand on his arm. "We both were, Ethan. But now we know the truth." He nodded, then straightened his shoulders. "Mom, Rebecca, I want you out of this store and out of our lives. Now." Maddie's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't mean that. We're your family." "No," Ethan said firmly. "Jessica and Lucas are my family. You're just people who tried to destroy everything I love." As Maddie and Rebecca left, their threats and pleas falling on deaf ears, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. But it was short-lived. Ethan turned to me, his eyes filled with remorse. "Jess, I am so sorry. For everything. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but I want to make things right." I looked at him, The man I'd loved for over 2 decades, the father of my child. Could I forgive him? Could we rebuild what we'd lost? It's going to take time, I said finally, and a lot of work. But I'm willing to try if you are. Ethan nodded, tears in his eyes. I am. I promise, Jess. No more lies, no more secrets. As we stood there in the store that had been the center of so much pain and betrayal, I realized we were at a crossroads. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and difficult conversations. But for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. We had weathered the storm. Now it was time to rebuild. The weeks following Maddie and Rebecca's departure were a whirlwind of activity. Ethan and I threw ourselves into rebuilding the store, both physically and financially. We spent long nights poring over books, untangling the web of deceit his mother and sister had woven. One evening, as we sat surrounded by paperwork, Ethan looked up at me, his eyes filled with remorse. I'm so sorry for everything, Jess. I want to make it right. I paused, considering his words. We'll do it together, I said finally. But it's going to take time. He nodded, reaching for my hand. I let him take it, feeling a flicker of the old warmth between us. The next challenge came when we sat Lucas down to explain everything. His face cycled through shock, anger, and finally a deep sadness. How could they do this to us? He asked, his voice breaking. I pulled him into a hug, feeling Ethan's arms encircle us both. People do desperate things when they're afraid of losing control, I said softly. But we're going to be okay. We have each other. As the days passed, we slowly found our rhythm again. The store began to thrive under our joint management, free from Maddie's manipulations. Customers commented on the positive change in atmosphere, and for the first time in years, I felt truly proud of what we'd built. Ethan and I attended counseling, working through the pain and betrayal. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I wondered if we'd make it. But slowly, surely, we began to rebuild trust. The final piece fell into place when Ava came to see us, her belly now prominently rounded. I'm moving back home, she announced. My family's there, and I think it's best for everyone. I saw the mix of relief and sadness in Ethan's eyes. He'd made his choice, but it wasn't without cost. We'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of, I said, surprising myself with the sincerity in my voice. As Ava left, Ethan turned to me, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Thank you, he whispered, for giving me another chance, for fighting for us when I was too weak to do it myself. I took his hand, feeling the familiar calluses, the strength that had once made me feel so safe. We fought for this together, I said, and we'll keep fighting every day. That night, as we closed up the store, I looked around at the shelves we'd restocked, the walls we'd repainted, the future we were rebuilding. It wasn't perfect, and it never would be. But it was ours. Ethan wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me close. Ready to go home? I leaned into him, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months. Yes, I said. Let's go home. As we walked out into the cool evening air, I realized that home wasn't just a place. It was this feeling, this sense of belonging and purpose we'd fought so hard to reclaim. We had weathered the storm, and though the scars remained, we were stronger for having survived it. Together, we stepped into the night, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Our story wasn't over. It was just beginning a new chapter.